Triplets sing outside a hospital for donations. The surgeon steps out and whispers, "I know that voice. Please, somebody help our mama." 3 children, triplets, no older than 7, stood outside Grady Crest Hospital, their tiny voices shaking the night air. Under the flickering streetlight, they sang with every ounce of breath in their lungs, their Sunday shoes scuffed, their hats turned up for donations. "She can't breathe," the little boy cried. "They said they won't fix her unless we pay." Gasps rippled through the small crowd gathering on the sidewalk. Nurses paused on smoke break. A taxi driver cut his engine. Even strangers with busy lives felt their hearts twist at the sight of these children, their harmonies carrying pain far too old for their years. And then the glass doors slid open. A man in scrubs stepped out. Dr. Marcus Reed, Atlanta's rising heart surgeon, known for his precision and coolness under pressure. But the moment the children's melody reached him, his stride faltered. He froze. "That song!" His voice cracked in disbelief. The tune yanked him backward in time. College nights, music spilling through cheap speakers, a girl with a laugh like spring. He whispered, "I know that voice." The children sang harder, clutching a wrinkled paper titled "Home Again." Their voices rose against the night, desperate and unrelenting. Marcus's chest clenched. Upstairs, a woman fought for her life, and though he hadn't heard her name yet, every note told him the truth. Tiana. Hours earlier, the triplets had been in their modest apartment when their world collapsed. Their mother, Tiana Price, gasped for breath, her chest rattling as she slumped against the couch. "Mommy, wake up!" Nova cried, shaking her gently. Miss Ruby, the neighbor from downstairs, stormed in and dialed 911 with hands that never trembled, even in chaos. Sirens screamed through the night as EMTs carried Tiana into the ambulance. The triplets clung to each other in silence, tears streaking their faces. Miss Ruby pulled them close, declaring, "We're going too," and her tone left no room for argument. At the hospital, fluorescent lights burned overhead as a desk clerk typed, frowned, and delivered a sentence colder than steel. "Insurance denied. Payment required before surgery can proceed." The words cut deep, sharper than any scalpel. The triplets didn't understand all of it, but they understood enough. No money meant no help, so they did the only thing they knew how. Outside, under the streetlight, they unfolded their mama's old lyrics and began to sing. Their voices trembled at first, but the harmony soon grew strong, pulling strangers closer with every note. Marcus approached them, kneeling so his eyes met theirs. "Where did you learn that song?" Nova lifted her chin. "Our mama wrote it." "She's inside, but they won't help her 'cause we don't got money." Marcus's breath caught. He saw their dimples, their fearless gaze. Something stirred deep inside him, a possibility he hadn't dared imagine. Before he could ask more, a security guard strode forward. "No loitering! Move along!" Marcus rose to his full height, his voice hard as steel. "They're with me." The guard froze, recognizing the badge on his scrubs. Marcus turned back to the children, his tone softened, almost breaking. "Keep singing. Don't let anyone stop you." And as he disappeared back into the hospital, their harmony followed him, echoing in his chest like a heartbeat he couldn't ignore. Upstairs lay Tiana, the woman he once loved, and standing outside were 3 children who might just be his. Marcus's footsteps echoed down the corridor as he forced his way past the churning thoughts in his head. He grabbed the nearest patient board, scanning for the name he already knew would be there. Tiana Price. The letters blurred for a moment before his vision sharpened. His jaw clenched. It had been years since he'd last seen her, yet here she was, her life hanging on a hospital bed, while 3 children who looked just like him sang outside to keep her alive. He snapped the chart shut just as a voice cut across the room. "Dr. Reed?" 2 security guards had followed him in, ready to drag the triplets away for loitering. Behind them, Miss Ruby stood squarely in the way, arms crossed. "These babies ain't hurting nobody," she snapped. "They're just trying to save their mama." Marcus stepped forward before the guards could answer. "They're under my supervision," he said firmly. His badge carried weight, and the guards exchanged a look before backing down. Miss Ruby exhaled, relief in her eyes. "You their doctor now?" she asked. Marcus swallowed hard. "I might have to be." Out in the waiting area, the triplets sat in a huddle. A cafeteria worker had handed them 3 cups of cocoa, still steaming. Marcus crouched to their level, his voice gentler now. "Your mama's strong. The doctors are taking care of her, but I need to ask you something. That song you were singing, did she teach you?" Nova nodded, protective as always. "She wrote it, said it was ours. She makes us sing it when things get hard." Marcus hummed a few bars of the bridge under his breath. Without hesitation, the children picked it up, their voices blending perfectly with his. For a brief moment, the sterile hospital air seemed to soften, filled with something warm and unexplainable. But the spell broke when Alicia, the hospital's social worker, stepped into the circle. Clipboard in hand, her expression was kind but weary. "We have charity programs," she told Marcus quietly. "If the family qualifies, we can get her approved for surgery without upfront payment." But, Marcus pressed. She glanced toward the administrator's office. "Mister, Bolton is blocking it, claims it's misuse of resources." Marcus's jaw tightened. Bolton was notorious for putting the bottom line above human lives. When Alicia knelt before the children, her voice softened. "I'll fight for your mama," she promised, "but I'll need proof, documents, financial statements. Without them, the panel won't even consider it." The children looked lost, not understanding half the words. Miss Ruby pulled them close. "We'll find what you need," she said, with steel in her tone. From across the hall, Bolton's shadow filled the doorway. "Dr. Reed," he said flatly, "if you have a personal connection to this case, step away. Conflict of interest won't be tolerated." Marcus's eyes burned, but he forced his voice steady. "Understood." He turned back to the children, lowering his tone. "I'll make sure your mama gets what she needs." And as he stood, his heart slammed against his ribs, because if what his gut told him was true, this wasn't just any case. These children weren't just any patients. They were his blood. The beeping of monitors echoed faintly from behind the glass partition. Tiana lay pale and still, her chest rising and falling with the help of an oxygen mask. Marcus stood at a distance, his hand tightening around the chart he wasn't supposed to be holding. Memories pulled at him without mercy. Nights at college, sitting cross-legged on a dorm room floor, strumming a borrowed guitar, while Tiana scribbled lyrics in her notebook. The song the triplets sang was theirs, born in those days when love had seemed unbreakable. He hadn't heard it in years, and yet every note haunted him now. A shift in the bed caught his attention. Tiana stirred, her lashes fluttering before her eyes opened slowly. For a heartbeat, confusion filled her face, then recognition. Her gaze locked on Marcus through the glass. She froze. Her lips trembled behind the mask, and a storm of panic flashed in her eyes. She turned her head sharply away, as if looking at him might kill her faster than her illness. Marcus's heart wrenched, but before he could step closer, Alicia approached, her clipboard hugged to her chest. "Dr. Reed, I spoke to the charity review board. There's 1 slot open tomorrow for intake. If Ms. Price's paperwork is approved, they'll cover the procedure." Marcus let out a slow breath. "And if it's not?" Alicia's eyes dimmed. "Then she'll be discharged, and she won't survive without intervention. On the other side of the waiting room, the triplets huddled beside Miss Ruby, whispering about whether their mother would wake up. The youngest, Nico, tugged at his sister's sleeves. "What if Mama don't make it?" "Don't say that," Nova snapped, though her voice shook. "She will." "She has to." Miss Ruby pulled them close. "Your Mama's a fighter." "Don't you forget it?" Marcus turned back to Alicia, lowering his voice. "What's Bolton's angle? Why is he blocking this?" "Budget cuts. Politics. He says cases like this drain the hospital's charity fund." Her tone dripped with disgust. "But if we can get supporting documents, bank statements, letters, maybe the panel will push it through anyway." Before Marcus could respond, Bolton himself appeared, his voice sharp as a blade. "Dr. Reed, I told you to stay clear of this case. Personal involvement will compromise the hospital." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "And what would you call denying a mother life-saving care because she can't pay?" Bolton's lip curled. "Reality, don't play hero." He turned and walked away, leaving the air heavy with rage. Later, back in her room, Tiana stirred again. This time her eyes stayed open, fixed on Marcus as he cautiously stepped inside. Her voice rasped, muffled under the mask. "Why are you here?" Marcus swallowed. "Because I couldn't stay away." Not when I heard that song. Tiana's eyes brimmed with tears. "You weren't supposed to hear it again." "Not you." His chest tightened. "Why not?" She turned her face to the wall, her shoulders trembling. "Because if you did, you'd know the truth I never wanted you to find out." The clock above the nurse's station ticked past midnight. The triplets had curled against each other on the plastic chairs, their cocoa cups empty, their voices hoarse from singing. Miss Ruby tucked a blanket around them, her sharp eyes still tracking every shadow in the hallway. Marcus hadn't left the hospital all night. He stood at the end of the corridor, his arms crossed, trying to steady his breath. Tiana's words looped in his head. "Because if you did, you'd know the truth I never wanted you to find out." He wanted answers, but more than that, he wanted to keep her alive. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, the city hadn't forgotten the children. The nurse who had recorded their song uploaded it to her social media account. By dawn, the video had spread across Atlanta like wildfire. Thousands of strangers had already shared it, their captions dripping with sympathy. 3 kids begging outside the hospital for their mama's life. Why is healthcare like this? By morning, the triplets were trending. Inside the hospital cafeteria, Marcus scrolled through his phone, his gut tightening as he watched their tiny voices echo back at him through the screen. The world had seen them now, the whole city demanding justice. But he knew this kind of attention could be dangerous too. For the children, for Tiana, and maybe for himself. At the next table, Miss Ruby whispered sharply as a man in a slick suit slid into the chair across from her. His smile was all teeth. "Name's Dre Collins," he said, flashing a business card at the triplets. "I manage talent. Y'all went viral overnight. Everybody's talking about you. You kids are stars now. With my help, we can get a recording deal, real money, maybe even a record contract." Nova's eyes lit up, but Ms. Ruby narrowed hers. "They ain't singers for hire," she snapped. "They're children worried about their mama." Dre chuckled, smooth as oil. "I'm talking about helping their mama. Studio gigs, sponsorships. We can raise 10 times more money than that little hat out front." The triplets glanced at each other, torn between hope and fear. Marcus, overhearing from the counter, strode over, his presence filling the space. He leaned down, voice low and dangerous. "Step away from them," Marcus said. Dre's grin faltered. "And you are?" "Their doctor." "Doctor, manager. What's the difference?" "Somebody's got to pay the bills." Dre smirked. "Unless you planning to cover the surgery yourself?" Marcus's eyes hardened. Leave. Now, for the first time, Dre seemed to sense the steel beneath Marcus's calm. He rose, buttoned his suit jacket, and slipped his card back into his pocket. Think it over. I'll be around. His shoes clicked across the floor as he disappeared through the doors. Miss Ruby muttered under her breath, "Vulture." Later that morning, Alicia rushed into the waiting room, her phone buzzing non-stop. "The video went viral," she said breathlessly. "We've had reporters calling, asking about the kids, about the hospital. Donations are already flooding in." The triplets perked up. "Does that mean Mama's surgery is paid for?" Nico asked eagerly. Alicia's smile dimmed. "Not exactly. The money isn't in the hospital's hands yet. Online funds take time to clear, and Mr. Bolton already told me he won't touch a dime of it until it's processed." Marcus muttered a curse under his breath. Bureaucracy, again. Bolton would drag this out until it was too late. Still, the children's voices had carried beyond the hospital walls. The city was listening, and Marcus knew Bolton couldn't silence them forever. That evening, Marcus found himself alone outside Tiana's room. Through the glass, he watched her sleep, her chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. He remembered the way she had looked away from him, her words trembling with guilt. He pressed his palm against the cool glass. "Tiana," he whispered, "why didn't you tell me?" Behind him, footsteps sounded. Miss Ruby's voice, low but steady, answered for her. "Maybe because she was protecting you." Marcus turned, startled. Ruby's gaze was sharp as ever. "You left for your big fellowship, Doctor. You don't know what she went through after you were gone. The choices she had to make." Before Marcus could reply, a sudden commotion erupted in the lobby. Raised voices, the sound of security radios crackling. The triplets had started singing again, this time inside the hospital entrance, determined to be heard. A crowd was forming, phones raised, live stream starting. Bolton stormed out of his office, face red with fury. "Get them out of here!" he barked, but the children didn't stop. Their voices grew louder, harmony soaring up through the lobby, echoing against marble walls. Staff paused, patients peeked out of rooms, and the song refused to die. And standing at the edge of the crowd, watching the children defy the hospital's orders with every breath, Marcus knew one thing for certain. The truth was coming, whether Tiana wanted it revealed or not. By morning, the hospital lobby had become more than a waiting space. It was a stage. Patients whispered, nurses leaned over counters, and visitors lingered just to hear the triplets sing again. Their harmonies carried across the marble floors, a plea wrapped in melody. But in the administrator's office, Mr. Bolton's jaw clenched tight as he slammed a folder onto his desk. "This is a hospital, not a circus," he barked. "Get those children out of the lobby before they embarrass us any further." Alicia, the social worker, stood her ground. "They're not begging for fun, sir. Their mother is dying." "Then maybe she should have had insurance," Bolton shot back coldly. "Rules are rules. Charity slots are limited, and we won't waste one on someone who hasn't proven their hardship." That word, proven, was like a stone in Alicia's stomach. She knew Tiana's situation, but without paperwork, Bolton would drag the case into endless delays. She left his office fuming, clutching the intake form that could save a life. Out in the lobby, she crouched to eye level with the triplets. "Listen to me," she said gently. "There's a special board meeting tomorrow. If I can show them proof, things like pay stubs, eviction notices, or medical bills, they might approve your mum's surgery." The children stared at her blankly. Nova frowned. "We don't got none of that." Miss Ruby shook her head. "Tiana's worked odd jobs for years, braiding hair, cleaning houses, whatever she could. Folks pay cash. She ain't got a boss to write no letter." Alicia's chest sank. "Without documentation, Bolton will say she doesn't qualify." At that moment, a commotion erupted near the entrance. The triplets had started singing again, this time louder, bolder. People gathered, pulling out phones. The crowd clapped along, moved by the children's courage. "Stop this at once!" Bolton's voice cut through the music as he stormed into the lobby. He raised a hand to security. "Remove them now." But before the guards could move, something unexpected happened. A nurse wheeled a patient forward, an elderly woman hooked up to oxygen, and she raised a trembling hand. "Leave them be." Their voices, they give us hope. Other patients nodded, murmuring in agreement. A man in a wheelchair shouted, "Let them sing!" The crowd swelled with voices, drowning out Bolton's protests. And then, one nurse, standing near the desk, held her phone high. She was live-streaming the entire scene. Thousands of viewers were watching in real time as the hospital administrator tried to silence 3 children begging for their mother's life. Bolton's face darkened, realizing too late that every word he said could ruin him. He turned sharply and retreated to his office, slamming the door behind him. Marcus had been watching quietly from the sidelines, fists clenched. He stepped forward, kneeling in front of the children. "You were brave," he said softly. "But listen, your mama's not going to get better if this fight stays in the lobby." "We need a plan." Nova's chin trembled, but she nodded. "We'll do whatever it takes." That night, the video of the hospital standoff hit social media. Number sign "Sing for Tiana" trended across Atlanta. Donations doubled, then tripled. Local radio stations replayed the children's harmonies. A DJ even called them Atlanta's Angels. For the first time, hope sparked in their small hearts, but hope was fragile. Late that evening, in her dimly lit hospital room, Tiana stirred awake. Her eyes fluttered open, landing on Marcus, who sat silently by her bed. She frowned behind the oxygen mask. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered hoarsely. "I can't walk away again," Marcus replied. Tears glistened in her eyes. "You don't understand. If you find out, everything falls apart." Marcus leaned closer. "Find out what?" Before she could answer, the monitor at her bedside shrieked, alarms flashing red. Nurses rushed in, calling orders as her chest heaved violently. The triplets, woken by the noise, bolted toward the room, their small faces pale with terror. Marcus stood frozen in the corner, his heart pounding as the staff surrounded her. And in that moment, one truth pierced him like a blade. If Tiana didn't make it through the night, the secret she carried would die with her. The shrill wail of the monitor filled the hospital room like a siren. Nurses rushed in, voices sharp with urgency. "BP dropping! Get the crash cart!" Marcus pressed his back to the wall, forcing himself not to interfere. He wasn't officially assigned to Tiana's case, and stepping in now could cost him his career. But every fiber of his being screamed at him to push past the staff and fight for her himself. The triplets clung to Miss Ruby in the doorway, their small bodies trembling. "Is Mama gonna die?" Nia whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't you say that," Miss Ruby snapped, though her own hands shook. "Your Mama's too stubborn to leave you. You hear me?" Minutes dragged like hours. Then, mercifully, the beeping steadied. The doctor leading the team. Doctor. Sana Patel looked up, her forehead damp with sweat. "Stabilized?" For now the children exhaled in unison, tears streaming silently down their faces. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. But deep inside, he knew this reprieve was temporary. Without surgery, time was slipping away fast. Later, in the dimly lit family waiting area, Marcus sat across from Ms. Ruby, while the children dozed against her shoulders. The weight of unspoken questions pressed heavily on him. He finally broke the silence. They look like me," he said quietly. Miss Ruby's sharp eyes cut to him. Took you long enough to notice. Marcus's throat tightened. Are they mine? Ruby tilted her head, lips pursed. That's a question only Tiana should answer. But I'll tell you this. She raised them without a father, without a partner, without a single soul but me to lean on. You walked away, chasing your big dreams. So if you're gonna step back in now, you'd better be ready to carry some weight. The words stung. Marcus swallowed the guilt, memories of his fellowship flashing in his mind. He'd left, yes, but Tiana had vanished without explanation, cutting him off completely. He'd spent years wondering why. Before he could respond, Alicia entered, looking exhausted but determined. Good news, she said. The charity panel agreed to hear Tiana's case tomorrow. Bad news. They're requiring a financial guardian to testify. They want proof of hardship from someone responsible for the children. Marcus frowned. She has Miss. Ruby shook her head. I'm not blood. If they want family, it's gotta be him. She jerked her chin toward Marcus. The room went still. Marcus's heart pounded. If he admitted any tie to Tiana or the children, it would confirm the conflict of interest Bolton had warned him about. It could destroy his career. But if he stayed silent, Tiana might not live long enough for the triplets to understand why their songs had never been enough. The next morning, the hospital lobby buzzed with tension. Reporters had gathered, cameras flashing as they tried to catch glimpses of the singing triplets. The children's video had gone national overnight. Anchors were calling them heroes, angels, and the voice of healthcare injustice. Dre Collins slithered back into the crowd, sunglasses hiding his eyes, a phone glued to his hand. He grinned as he scrolled through the donations page. Thousands of dollars poured in every hour. But Dre wasn't interested in saving Tiana. He was figuring out how to skim from the children's sudden fame. Back upstairs, Marcus leaned over the nurse's station as doctor. Patel approached. Her numbers aren't improving, she told him bluntly. We need to operate within 48 hours, or we risk losing her. I'm scheduling the OR, but unless Bolton approves funding, the case won't move. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'll get her that slot. Patel studied him. You care about this woman. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. That afternoon, Marcus finally stepped into Tiana's room while the children napped. She lay weak but awake, her eyes wary as they followed him. You should rest, he said softly. You should leave, she whispered. He ignored the sting. Those kids, they're mine, aren't they? Her eyes flickered, panic flashing for a moment before she looked away. You owe me the truth, Tiana. His voice cracked under the weight of years. I spent nights wondering why you cut me out, why you never answered. Did your father scare you off? Did you think I wouldn't fight for you? Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't that simple, Marcus. Then tell me, he pressed, because I look at them and I see myself staring back. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Meanwhile, in the boardroom across the hospital, Alicia faced off with Bolton and the charity committee. This case meets every requirement, she argued, sliding papers across the table. Single mother, no insurance, children with no financial stability. If we don't approve her, who are we saving these funds for? Bolton smirked. The guidelines require proof. No employment letter, no pay stubs, no utility records in her name. Without documents, we can't consider her. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Isn't there a family representative? Alicia hesitated. The answer was yes, but saying it aloud would drag Marcus directly into the line of fire. Back in the hallway, the triplets pressed their faces to the glass of their mother's room. Nova whispered, "She looks so tired." Nia held Nico's hand. "What if the board says no?" Nico's eyes filled with tears. "Then we'll sing louder." Their voices quivered as they hummed "Home Again" softly, trying to send strength through the walls. Marcus watched from behind them, his chest aching. He knew what he had to do. That evening, as the sun dipped over Atlanta, Marcus sat alone in his office. He opened his laptop and pulled up a DNA testing request, one he'd quietly ordered through a discreet lab days earlier. The results had arrived. His hands shook as he opened the email. The screen lit up with words that stole his breath. Probability of paternity, 99.7%. Marcus's knees went weak. He pressed a hand to his mouth, his vision blurring. The children weren't just strangers he pitied, they were his. A knock jolted him back. Alicia slipped inside, her face grave. "The board votes tomorrow. But Bolton knows something's going on. He's already digging into your past with Tiana. If you testify, you risk everything." Marcus closed the laptop slowly, his jaw set. "If I don't testify, they lose her." In her hospital bed, Tiana whispered to Miss Ruby, her voice breaking. "He can't find out." "Not like this." Ruby squeezed her hand, eyes fierce. "It's too late, baby. The truth's already here." Morning sunlight spilled through the hospital windows, but the triplets barely noticed. Their stomachs twisted with hunger and nerves as they clutched Ms. Ruby's hands, waiting outside the boardroom. Inside, a panel of stern-faced administrators debated their mother's fate. Marcus paced the corridor, his jaw tight. The DNA results burned in his pocket, a truth he hadn't yet shared with Tiana, or anyone else. He wanted to shout it to the world. "They're mine." But he also knew what Bolton would do with that information. One slip, and everything could collapse. The triplets stirred restlessly. Nico whispered, "Why they taken so long?" "Because people like Bolton drag their feet on purpose," Ruby muttered. "Don't you worry, sugar. We'll keep fighting." Before Marcus could answer, Dre Collins appeared, swaggering down the hall in his tailored suit and slick smile. He held up a glossy flyer. "Guess what, kids? You're famous now. A mall downtown is hosting a fundraiser concert. They want you to headline." Nova's eyes widened. "A concert? For us?" "That's right," Dre purred. "Big stage, big crowd. You sing, people donate. Money pours in for your mama." "It's the chance of a lifetime." Miss Ruby narrowed her eyes. "And how much you skimming this time, Dre?" Dre clutched his chest in mock offense. "Please, I'm offering these kids exposure, and the mall's cutting a big check. They deserve it." Marcus stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "You're not dragging them into one of your schemes. They're children, not your payday." Dre smirked. "Children who need money fast. You gonna stop them from saving their mother? Or you just scared they'll succeed without you?" The words hung heavy in the air. The triplets looked between Marcus and Dre, torn. They wanted to believe Marcus, but Dre dangled the one thing they needed most: hope. Later that afternoon, the decision came down. Alicia returned from the boardroom, her face drawn tight. "They've delayed again," she said. "They want more documentation before approving the charity slot." Ruby cursed under her breath. "Documentation? What more proof do they need? The woman's dying." Tears spilled down Nia's cheeks. "So Mama still can't have surgery?" Alicia knelt to hug her. "Not yet, baby." But we won't stop. Marcus's fists clenched. Every hour wasted was another risk to Tiana's life. He was a surgeon trained to act, not to sit idle. Yet here he was, shackled by politics and red tape. That's when Dre pounced. "You hear that? The hospital ain't lifting a finger. But the showcase tomorrow, that's guaranteed money. Real cash you can use now. Enough to push through the surgery." The children's eyes glistened with desperate hope. Even Ruby hesitated, torn between her instincts and reality. The next day, the mall buzzed with Saturday crowds. A makeshift stage stood in the atrium, bright lights and banners announcing the charity benefit. Dre strutted backstage, grinning like a king. "This is it, kids. Sing your hearts out. I'll handle the rest." Ruby frowned at the contract he shoved her way. 60% to you? Are you out your mind? It's standard management fees, Dre lied smoothly. Sign or no show. Ruby started to tear it up, but Nova grabbed her arm. "Please, Aunt Ruby." "We gotta try," Ruby froze, caught between protecting them and honoring their faith. She finally shoved the paper back into Dre's chest. "We ain't signing nothing." "They'll sing, but you ain't seeing a dime you don't deserve." The kids stepped onto the stage. The crowd hushed, then erupted into applause as their voices lifted in harmony. Phones rose, live streams spread, donations funneled in directly through QR codes Alicia had set up. Dre's cut slipped away as the real link went viral, but Bolton hadn't been idle. From his office, he called mall security. "Shut that down. Liability risk. Hospital's reputation on the line." Minutes later, guards moved in, trying to clear the children from the stage. The audience booed, shouting for them to be left alone. One man yelled, "They're singing for their mama!" The boos turned into chants. "Let them sing! Let them sing!" Marcus pushed through the crowd, his presence commanding. He grabbed the mic, his voice echoing. These children shouldn't have to beg for basic care. This is what happens when a system puts profit over people. The crowd erupted in cheers, cameras flashing, reporters swarmed, capturing the moment. Atlanta's celebrated surgeon publicly defying his own hospital. Dre watched from the wings, fury in his eyes as his payday slipped further away. He hissed into his phone, "Fine! If I can't get the money clean, I'll get it another way." Back at the hospital, Bolton seethed as footage rolled across local news. "Dr. Reed has crossed the line," he muttered to his assistant. "If he thinks he can turn this into a publicity stunt, he's mistaken. By tomorrow, he'll regret it." Meanwhile, in her bed, Tiana saw the live stream replay on Ruby's phone. Her heart swelled with pride and fear all at once. She whispered, "He's risking everything." Ruby squeezed her hand. "Because he knows the truth now. You can't hide it forever." Tiana closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "If he takes that stand, they'll destroy him. And I don't know if I can let him lose his career. For me." That night, the triplets huddled together, their tiny voices whispering prayers. "Please let Mama be okay. Please let them listen tomorrow." And in his office, Marcus stared at the DNA results again, the numbers glowing on his screen, 99.7%. Tomorrow, the charity board would vote again. Dre was plotting, Bolton was sharpening his knives, and Marcus knew he could no longer stay silent. Thunderheads rolled over Atlanta like bruises across the sky. The weather report flickered on the hospital lobby TV, warning of a tropical storm moving inland from the Gulf. Residents were urged to prepare for power outages and flooding. Inside Grady Crest Medical, tension was already at a breaking point, and the storm was just one more weight pressing down. The triplets huddled on a bench in the lobby, watching the screen nervously. "Is the storm going to break the hospital?" Nico asked, clutching his sister's hands. Miss Ruby smoothed his curls. "Ain't no storm taking this place down, but we best pray the lights don't cut out. Machines don't run on hope." Marcus stood nearby, his arms folded as he listened to Dr. Patel. "Her vitals are dipping again," Patel murmured. "She won't last through the week without surgery." Marcus glanced toward the elevators, knowing Tiana was upstairs fighting for every breath. "We can't wait on Bolton and his committee. If that storm hits and we lose power..." Patel cut him off. "I know. But unless the charity fund clears her case, we don't have the authority to book an OR. Bolton has the final say." The injustice burned in Marcus's gut. He'd sworn an oath to heal, not to bargain. Meanwhile, Dre Collins hadn't disappeared after his failed showcase scam. He paced the food court of the very same mall, on the phone with a contact. "I don't care how you do it. Find me a way into that donation account. Those kids are sitting on thousands, and if I don't get my cut, somebody else will." On the other end, his associate laughed. "Easy money, Dre. We'll rewrote it before they even know it's gone." Dre grinned. The triplets thought they were saving their mama. Soon they'd be broke and broken. Back at the hospital, Alicia arrived with a stack of forms, looking flustered. "The board delayed again," she told Marcus. "They're hiding behind the storm, saying it's too risky to schedule new cases until it passes." Marcus's jaw clenched. That storm could be 2 days, maybe 3. She doesn't have that long. "They don't care," Alicia said bitterly. "Bolton's using it as an excuse to stall until donations clear. He'd rather risk her dying than admit the system failed." The children overheard, their small faces paling. Nova clenched her fists. "We'll sing again. If the board won't listen, the whole city will." Nia nodded fiercely. "We'll make them hear us." That night, as rain hammered against the hospital windows, the triplets stood in the lobby again, singing into the storm. Their voices echoed through the atrium, mixing with thunder outside. Patients gathered, nurses hummed along, and soon the entire first floor became a choir. Cameras flashed as reporters streamed the moment live. Viewers across the city watched children sing through a storm for their dying mother. Donations spiked. The hashtag #SingForTiana trended nationwide. Marcus stood on the balcony above, watching the crowd swell, his chest aching. He'd never felt prouder or more terrified, because the more public this became, the closer Bolton would dig into the one secret Marcus had just uncovered. The children were his. Upstairs, Tiana woke to the sound of music drifting through the vents. Miss Ruby showed her the live stream on her phone. Tears slipped down Tiana's cheeks as she whispered, "They shouldn't have to fight like this." "They're just babies," Ruby squeezed her hand. "They're strong, 'cause you made 'em strong." But Marcus, he knows Tiana. He knows those kids are his. Tiana turned away, shame twisting in her chest. If he claims them now, they'll destroy him. Bolton's just waiting for an excuse to end his career. Ruby's eyes softened. Maybe his career don't matter as much as you think. Maybe family matters more. By dawn, the storm had grown fierce. Rain pounded the roof, wind rattled the windows, and the hospital flickered on backup generators twice before stabilizing. Staff scrambled, moving critical patients closer to emergency outlets. Dr. Patel grabbed Marcus in the hall. "We've got an anesthesiologist volunteering to cover the case. If we can get clearance, we could move her to the OR this afternoon." Marcus's pulse raced. "Then let's do it." Patel shook her head. "Not without Bolton's approval. He's the only one authorized during emergency protocol," Marcus cursed under his breath. "Then we'll force his hand." When Marcus entered Bolton's office, the administrator didn't look up from his paperwork. "If you're here to beg again, save your breath." "This isn't about begging," Marcus said coldly. "This is about a mother who will die before the storm ends, unless you approve her case." Bolton finally looked up, his smile thin. "Funny, isn't it? She disappears for years, then suddenly shows up in your hospital, with 3 children that look an awful lot like you." Marcus froze, his blood turning to ice. Bolton leaned back in his chair. "I did some digging. You had a relationship with her, didn't you? If the board finds out those children are yours, you'll be finished here. Conflict of interest, medical ethics violation. Kiss your career goodbye." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You'd rather see a woman die than admit the system failed her?" Bolton's smile sharpened. I'd rather protect this hospital from scandal. If you care about her, walk away, let her go. Save yourself. Marcus stormed out, fury burning in his veins. For years he'd dedicated his life to medicine, to building a spotless reputation. But now the truth was clear. The only thing standing between Tiana and death was Bolton's cruelty. That evening, the storm reached its peak. Lightning split the sky, thunder rolled like cannon fire, and the hospital flickered into darkness before backup power groaned to life. Downstairs, the triplets huddled together, frightened but determined. We gotta keep singing, Nova whispered. If the lights go out, our voices will be the light. And so they sang again, their harmonies piercing through the blackout, carrying hope into the chaos. Marcus watched them, his decision forming like steel inside him. Tomorrow, when the charity board convened, he would no longer hide. He would tell them the truth, no matter the cost. Upstairs, Tiana's monitors beeped erratically, her heart rate dipping with every passing hour. And outside, Dre Collins sat in his car near the hospital, a laptop glowing on his dashboard. His partner's voice crackled over the line. We're in. We've rerouted the donation account. By morning, every penny will be ours. Dre grinned. Perfect, let the city cry. By the time they figure it out, I'll be long gone. The storm battered Atlanta all night, howling against the hospital windows. Inside, the power flickered again and again before humming back to life. Nurses moved briskly through the halls, their voices tight. The whole building felt like it was holding its breath. Marcus sat alone in his office, the glow of his laptop, the only light. His eyes were fixed on the words that had already seared themselves into his brain. Probability of paternity, 99.7%. There was no denying it now. Nova, Nia, and Nico weren't just brave children singing for their mother. They were his children, flesh of his flesh. He leaned back in his chair, pressing his palms over his face. Memories crashed over him. Tiana's laughter, the way she used to rest her head on his chest while they wrote songs, the night she disappeared without a word. He'd told himself for years that she'd moved on, that she didn't want him. But the truth was more complicated. She had been carrying his children, alone. A knock at the door startled him. Alicia stepped in, her face pale with exhaustion. The board meets in the morning, she said, but Bolton's moving against you. He's telling them you have a personal connection to this case. He wants you disqualified before you even open your mouth. Marcus's jaw clenched. He's right. I do have a connection. Alicia froze. You mean? He nodded, voice hoarse. They're mine. For a moment, Alicia said nothing. Then she exhaled sharply. That changes everything. If you testify, they'll call it a conflict of interest. Bolton will use it to kill her case. And if I stay silent, she dies anyway. Marcus replied. His eyes burned with a mix of rage and resolve. I won't let that happen. Not again. Upstairs, Tiana lay awake, listening to the storm. Ruby sat by her side, knitting with her usual steady hands, though even she looked worried. He knows, doesn't he? Tiana whispered. Ruby didn't look up. He knows. Been knowing ever since those babies opened their mouths. Tiana's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want him to pay this price. Bolton will ruin him if he admits it. His career, everything he worked for. Ruby set the needles down and leaned forward. Baby, you can't spend your life protecting a man from the truth. He's a father. He has a right to claim his children, and they have a right to know him. Tiana turned her face away, but the tears rolled anyway. The next morning, the boardroom filled with tension. The storm had knocked out power across half the city, and the hospital was running on limited generators. Patients were anxious, staff stretched thin, but the charity committee convened anyway. Marcus entered with Alicia at his side, his white coat crisp, despite the sleepless night. Across the table, Bolton smirked like a man certain of victory. "Dr. Reed," one of the board members began, "we understand you've taken an unusual interest in Ms. Price's case. Can you explain why?" Marcus's heart pounded. He could lie, keep his career intact, or he could tell the truth. He rose to his feet, looking each member in the eye. "Because she is more than a patient to me. Years ago, Tiana Price was the woman I loved, and those 3 children outside in the lobby, those are my children." Gasps rippled around the table. Alicia's eyes widened, but she didn't flinch. Bolton leaned back, his smile sharp as glass. "There you have it. Conflict of interest. His testimony is invalid." "Invalid?" Marcus snapped. "Or inconvenient? You've delayed this case again and again while a woman's life hangs in the balance. She doesn't have days left. She doesn't even have hours. And you're hiding behind policy while children beg strangers in the street for their mother's life." The room buzzed with whispers. One of the board members, Mrs. Caldwell, adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Bolton, is it true the hospital has already received tens of thousands in donations earmarked for Ms. Price's care?" Bolton stiffened. "The funds haven't cleared. We can't use them yet." Alicia slammed a file onto the table. "That's a lie. They cleared this morning, but someone rerouted the account." All eyes turned to her. She held up her phone, her voice shaking with fury. "The platform flagged suspicious activity. The money was diverted to an outside account. We believe it was an attempted fraud." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Doctor." Bolton's face flushed, but he recovered quickly. "Regardless, the rules are clear. Dr. Reed is disqualified from this case. Without his testimony, we cannot prove hardship." Mrs. Caldwell leaned forward. "On the contrary, if the father of these children is standing here, saying he has not been financially supporting them, then that is hardship, and it only strengthens their eligibility." For the first time, Bolton's smug confidence faltered. Down in the lobby, the triplets watched anxiously as people whispered around them. Reporters circled like hawks, waiting for word from upstairs. Nova held her siblings' hands, whispering, "He's fighting for us." "I know he is outside." The storm howled louder, rain beating against the glass doors. Back upstairs, the boardroom erupted in debate. Some members argued the optics of approving Tiana's case under such circumstances. Others, moved by the children's story, insisted they had no choice. Finally, Mrs. Caldwell rapped the table. "Enough. We'll vote." The members scribbled on slips of paper. The air was thick with tension as the votes were counted. 5 for approval, 4 against. "The charity board approves Ms. Price's case," Mrs. Caldwell announced. "Her surgery will be scheduled immediately." Relief washed through Marcus like a flood. Alicia sagged against her chair, exhaling in triumph. Bolton's face, however, was thunder. He leaned close to Marcus as the room cleared. "You think you've won? You've just signed your own death warrant in this hospital. By the time I'm through, you won't practice medicine anywhere in this city." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "As long as she lives, I can live with that." But downstairs, Dre's plan was already in motion. He paced his apartment, laptop open, as lines of code scrolled. "Almost done," his partner muttered over video call. "Once this last transfer clears, the account's empty. Kids won't see a dime." Dre grinned. "Perfect. By the time the surgery's done, they'll realize they've been singing for nothing." And at that very moment, in her hospital bed, Tiana gasped, her chest tightening again. The monitors shrieked as her vitals plummeted. Nurses shouted, rushing in with emergency equipment. The storm outside roared. Inside, chaos erupted. And Marcus, rushing toward her room, knew, even with the board's approval, they might already be too late. The storm hammered Atlanta with the fury of 100 fists. Rain lashed against the glass walls of Grady Crest Medical, and thunder cracked so loud it shook the very bones of the building. Inside, the lights flickered once, twice, then, with a sharp pop, they died. For a split second, silence blanketed the halls. No machines, no voices, just the storm outside. Then the alarms kicked in, shrill, urgent. The backup generators sputtered to life, casting the hospital into a dim, uneven glow. Nurses shouted across corridors, rolling carts and rushing to check on patients hooked to machines. Panic rippled through the waiting rooms as visitors clutched loved ones in the dark. In the ICU, Marcus sprinted to Tiana's room. Her monitors flickered, glitching on generator power. Her chest heaved, fighting for every breath. "Stay with me, Tiana," he whispered, gripping her hand. "Stay with me." Downstairs, the triplets sat huddled with Miss Ruby when the power cut. The sudden darkness made Nico cry out, his small fingers clutching at his sister's. "Shh, baby, it's okay," Ruby soothed, though her own voice trembled. But Nia's eyes darted around, wide with fear. "What if the machines stop working?" "Mama needs them," Nova swallowed hard. Then, with the courage of someone far older than 7, she stood. "We can't let everybody be scared. Mama says music makes fear smaller. We gotta sing." Ruby blinked at her. "Now? In the dark?" "Yes," Nova said firmly. She turned to her siblings. "Come on, for Mama." So the 3 of them rose in the middle of the lobby and began to sing. Their voices, thin at first, threaded through the chaos. Patients looked up. Visitors paused their frantic whispers. Even staff slowed, their heads turning toward the sound. "Lift every voice and sing." The triplets' harmony floated through the darkness, warm and steady. Slowly, the panic eased. People breathed deeper. A nurse smiled through her tears. A man in a wheelchair wiped his eyes. On the 6th floor, Alicia was trapped in an elevator when the power cut. The car groaned, stuck between floors. Beside her, Nia had been riding up to bring her mother a card she'd drawn. Fear quivered in the child's voice. "We're stuck, aren't we?" Alicia forced calm into her tone. "Just for a little while. The maintenance team will get us out." Nia's hands shook. "I don't like it in here." "It's dark," Alicia knelt, taking her hands. "Then let's do what your sisters are doing downstairs. Sing. Can you teach me the song?" And in the small, trapped space, Nia's trembling voice began to weave home again. Alicia joined in, her adult voice uneven but heartfelt. For a moment, the elevator was no longer a cage, but a choir box. Meanwhile, Nico darted around the waiting room, restless energy bubbling in his chest. He couldn't sit still while his sisters sang. He tugged at Ruby's arm. "We gotta help more. People need water. We can pass it out." Ruby frowned, but the determination in his eyes made her nod. "All right then. Go grab those bottles from the vending machine, but stay where I can see you." So Nico became a tiny soldier of hope, pressing bottles into hands, offering small smiles. The storm outside roared, but inside children carried the light. Upstairs, Marcus paced outside the ICU as the machines flickered again. Dr. Patel rushed past him. "The OR's prepped, but we're running on partial power. If we start now and the backup fails, we could lose her mid-surgery." Marcus's fists clenched. "If we wait, we lose her anyway." Patel met his eyes. "Then we need more generators. The city's sending some, but they're hours away." Marcus dragged a hand through his hair. Hours they didn't have. Then a familiar melody drifted through the vents, faint but unmistakable. Home again. The triplets were singing below, their voices rising against the storm. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the sound steady him. He turned back to Patel, determination blazing. We buy her time, no matter what it takes. Out in the parking lot, headlights pierced the storm. A convoy of vans pulled up, generators strapped to trailers. Men in rain slickers jumped out, unloading equipment. One of them, a pastor from a local church, shouted above the thunder, "These kids' voices brought half the city to its feet. We ain't letting the lights go out on their mama." Ruby saw the trucks from the lobby window and clutched her chest. Lord, you answer prayers faster than lightning. The crowd in the lobby cheered as the machines rumbled to life, feeding new power into the hospital's veins. But not everyone was cheering. Upstairs, Bolton seethed in his office. He had hoped the storm would force a delay that might quietly kill the case. Instead, the children's voices had rallied the entire city. He slammed his fist on the desk. If this turns into a media circus, it's my head on the chopping block. Reed thinks he's a hero. We'll see how much of a hero he is when I tear his career apart. By midnight, the worst of the storm had passed, but the city was still drowning in darkness. Inside the hospital, the triplets sat on the floor, their voices hoarse but unyielding. Marcus finally approached them, kneeling so his eyes met theirs. His voice softened. You don't know what you've done tonight. You didn't just save your mama, you saved this whole hospital. Nova blinked at him, exhausted. Did we do good? He smiled, his throat tight. You did more than good. You did a miracle. They smiled faintly, leaning against each other, finally drifting to sleep. But in the shadows of the parking lot, Dre Collins sat in his car, laptop glowing on his knees. His partner's voice buzzed through the speaker. Transfer complete. Donations emptied. By morning, the account will show 0. Dre smirked. Perfect. Let the city celebrate. Tomorrow they'll realize they've been singing for nothing. Upstairs, in her hospital bed, Tiana stirred weakly. Her eyelids fluttered open, her voice faint. Marcus? He leaned close, taking her hand. I'm here. Her lips trembled. Promise me, no matter what Bolton does, you won't let the children carry this burden alone. Marcus's chest ached. I promise. The machines beeped steadily for now, but he knew time was running short. Surgery was inevitable, and so was the showdown with Bolton. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving Atlanta bruised and waterlogged. Streets were littered with branches, traffic lights blinked red, and whole blocks sat in darkness. But inside Grady Crest Hospital, one light hadn't gone out all night. The voices of 3 children who refused to stop singing. Their harmony had been live-streamed during the blackout. By morning, millions had seen it. Radio DJs replayed the clip, morning talk shows praised their bravery, and strangers called them the heart of Atlanta. But in the hospital boardroom, celebration was the last thing on Bolton's mind. Their case has become a media circus, he growled, slamming a newspaper onto the table. The headline screamed, Triplets sing through storm as mother fights for life. Mrs. Caldwell, calm and steady, met his glare. Perhaps that's because this family deserves help. Bolton's lip curled. They don't deserve to bankrupt this hospital. And as for Dr. Reed, his eyes narrowed. He's finished here. I'll make sure of it. Meanwhile, in the cafeteria, Ruby handed the triplets paper plates stacked with pancakes, courtesy of a kind nurse. Their voices were hoarse from singing all night, but their spirits were high. We saved Mama, Nico whispered proudly. Ruby kissed his curls. Baby, you gave hope to the whole city. Then Alicia burst in, her face pale. She clutched her phone tightly. The donation account, she stammered. It's empty. Every dollar's gone. Nova froze mid-bite. What do you mean, gone? Someone hacked it, Alicia said, her voice trembling. All the money people gave, tens of thousands, It was rerouted to a private account. They can't trace it. Yet Ruby's hands shook with fury. That snake, Dre! The triplets stared at each other, panic rising. But Mama needs that money, Nia cried. We can't let her die. Marcus arrived just as their voices broke. Alicia turned to him, tears in her eyes. Without those funds, Bolton will try to reverse the approval. He'll claim the case can't be covered. Marcus's jaw tightened. Not if I stop him. That afternoon, Tiana stirred awake. Her chest rose shallowly, every breath a battle. Marcus sat beside her, his hand hovering just above hers. They approved your case, he told her gently. You'll get the surgery. Her lips trembled. But at what cost? He hesitated. Then, with a steady voice, he said, I know the truth now, Tiana. The children, they're mine. Her eyes widened with panic, filling with tears. You weren't supposed to find out like this. Why didn't you tell me? Marcus's voice cracked. All these years, I could have been there. I could have helped. Tiana turned her face away, shame etched into every line. I didn't want to ruin you. You had your fellowship, your career. I couldn't let you sacrifice it all for me. Marcus's throat burned. You think my career means more than family? Than you. Her silence was answer enough. He leaned closer, whispering fiercely. Listen to me. You are not alone anymore, neither are they. Whatever it costs me, I'll pay it. You and those kids, you're my family, and I'm not walking away again. For the first time in years, her tears spilled not from fear, but from the fragile spark of hope. That evening, the lobby filled with reporters, cameras flashing as the triplets shyly answered questions. What made you keep singing? One asked. Nova lifted her chin proudly. Because Mama needed us. And music makes fear smaller, another reporter crouched to their level. Do you know Doctor? Marcus Reed? Nia beamed. He's our friend. Nico blurted out. He's like our daddy. The reporters gasped, scribbling furiously. Ruby's eyes widened, muttering, Lord, these babies going break the internet again. Across town, Dre Collins smashed his laptop shut, cursing as news anchors reported the donation theft. They're on to us, his partner warned over the phone. I don't care, Dre snapped. As long as I've got the money, they can sing till their throats bleed. They'll never see a dime. But in his gut, Dre knew the city wouldn't rest until justice was served. And Marcus Reed, if he suspected Dre, wouldn't stop until he dragged him into the light. Back in the boardroom, Bolton held up a folder triumphantly. New development. The donation funds are gone. Without them, this case is no longer financially viable. Mrs. Caldwell's voice was sharp. You can't penalize them for being victims of fraud. Watch me, Bolton sneered, and when Reed tries to challenge me, I'll expose him for fathering those children. His conflict of interest will destroy both his credibility and his license. He smirked, certain of victory. That night, Marcus stood at the window of Tiana's room, watching the storm clouds fade into a bruised sunset. The children slept curled up in chairs, Ruby keeping watch with her usual fierce eyes. He whispered to Tiana, Tomorrow, they'll try to take everything from us. But I won't let them, no matter what Bolton does, no matter what Dre tries. Our family will survive this. Tiana's hand found his. Her voice was weak but steady. Then you'd better fight like you never have before. Down the hall, Alicia hurried toward him, her face grim. Marcus, you need to see this. She handed him her tablet. On the screen, a news alert blazed. Hospital administrator under fire as paternity rumors spread. And beneath it, a photo. Marcus kneeling with the children, their resemblance undeniable. Marcus's chest tightened. The truth was out. Morning sunlight struggled to break through heavy clouds, leaving the hospital shrouded in grey. but inside the air buzzed with energy. Reporters crowded the lobby, their cameras trained on the doors of the boardroom. The headline had spread overnight. Famed surgeon secretly father to singing triplets. The story had gone national, and now all eyes were on Marcus Reed. Inside the boardroom, the tension was suffocating. The long table was filled with administrators, legal advisors, and a few stone-faced board members. At the far end sat Bolton, smug in his seat, papers neatly stacked before him like weapons. Marcus sat opposite, shoulders squared. Alicia stood beside him, her expression fierce, while Ruby sat in the back, ready to pounce if anyone came for her babies. Mrs. Caldwell opened the meeting with a gavel tap. "We are here to address both the status of Ms. Tiana Price's surgery and the allegations surrounding Dr. Marcus Reed. Mr. Bolton, you may begin." Bolton wasted no time. He rose smoothly, his voice oozing with confidence. "This hospital's reputation has been jeopardized. We've been dragged into a media circus because Dr. Reed failed to disclose his personal involvement. The woman in question is not just any patient. She is his former partner, and those children parading in the lobby are his. That is a clear conflict of interest and a violation of medical ethics. I recommend we remove Dr. Reed from this case immediately and reconsider our approval for Ms. Price's surgery." Whispers rippled through the room. Cameras clicked outside the door, capturing shadows of the heated exchange. Marcus stood slowly, his gaze sweeping the room. "Yes," he said firmly, "it's true. Tiana Price is the woman I once loved, and those children, Nova, Nia, and Nico, they are mine." Gasps erupted. Bolton's smile widened like a predator who'd cornered his prey. "But let me be clear," Marcus continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "I did not abandon them. I did not choose my career over them. I was kept in the dark. Tiana left without telling me she was pregnant. She carried that burden alone because she feared I would lose everything if I stood by her." He leaned forward, his eyes burning with conviction. "And she was right. Because standing here today, I may lose everything. But if saving her life and claiming my children costs me my career, then so be it. Some things are worth more than reputation." The board fell silent. Mrs. Caldwell's eyes glistened, but Bolton leapt to his feet, slamming a hand on the table. "Touching speech," he sneered, "but this isn't about your feelings. It's about hospital policy. You cannot operate on your own partner, and certainly not on the mother of your children. If this surgery goes forward under your hand, it will destroy this hospital's credibility, and don't think the press won't crucify us for it." Marcus's voice hardened. "Then assign another surgeon. Dr. Patel is more than capable. I don't care who does it, as long as it gets done." Bolton smirked. "Without the donation funds, it doesn't matter who does it. The money's gone, and this board cannot authorize a surgery we can't pay for." Ruby shot to her feet, her voice sharp as a whip. "Gone?" That money was stolen. Those babies sang their throats raw, and this whole city gave to save their mama. Don't you dare punish them for a thief's crime. Mrs. Caldwell raised a hand. "She's right. If funds were stolen, we must pursue restitution. But that does not erase the intent of the donors. Public support is undeniable." Bolton's face reddened. "Intent doesn't pay medical bills." At that moment, Alicia stepped forward, holding her phone high. "Actually, it does. The donations platform just confirmed. Insurance will cover the stolen funds. Every dollar will be reimbursed. The money is secure." The room erupted in murmurs. Bolton's composure cracked. Marcus's chest swelled with relief. But Bolton wasn't finished. "Even with funds reinstated, this scandal is poison. If we proceed, this hospital becomes a laughingstock. Sponsors will pull out, donors will close their wallets. I urge the board to deny this surgery, not just for the hospital's sake, but for the greater good of this institution. Marcus slammed his hands on the table. The greater good? Tell that to 3 children about to lose their mother. Tell that to a woman who's done nothing but fight to survive. You talk about policy while people bleed. You hide behind rules while children sing outside your door. That isn't leadership. It's cowardice. The words rang out like thunder. Even some of Bolton's allies shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Caldwell rapped the gavel again. We've heard enough. We will vote immediately. Downstairs, the triplets sat on the edge of their seats, clutching each other's hands as they waited. Reporters crowded them with questions, but Ruby swatted the cameras away. Back up, she barked. These babies ain't your headline? Nova squeezed her siblings tighter. Please, let them say yes. Upstairs, the board scribbled their votes. The room was tense, every scratch of pen against paper echoing like a drumbeat. Mrs. Caldwell gathered the slips, counted, then looked up. The board approves, Ms. Price's surgery. It will proceed today. Relief exploded in Marcus's chest. Alicia exhaled sharply, Ruby wiped tears from her eyes, and the triplets' voices carried from the hall as they cheered. But Bolton's face twisted with rage. He leaned close to Marcus, his whisper venomous. You may have won this battle, Reed, but by tonight I'll have your license revoked. You'll never practice medicine again. Back in the lobby, the triplets jumped into Marcus's arms, their small voices overlapping. Did we win? Can Mama get better now? Marcus hugged them tight, his eyes wet. Yes, she's going to get her chance. But even as he held them, he felt the weight of Bolton's threat. The surgery was approved, but the war was far from over. And upstairs, as Tiana was prepped for the operating room, her heart monitor skipped again, warning of how little time she had left. The operating room glowed bright under sterile lights, a sharp contrast to the storm-dimmed halls beyond. Every surface gleamed, every tool laid out like soldiers in formation. Yet despite the calm order, the tension was suffocating. Tiana lay pale on the table, draped in sterile sheets, her chest rising faintly under the rhythm of the ventilator. Nurses moved quickly, prepping IVs, adjusting monitors, whispering urgent confirmations. Marcus stood just beyond the glass, scrub cap in hand, eyes locked on the woman he once loved. He wouldn't be allowed to cut today, Bolton had seen to that, but Dr. Sana Patel was a surgeon he trusted with his life. Patel glanced at him through the glass, her eyes steady. I've got this, her look said. Marcus gave the slightest nod, though his chest burned with the helplessness of standing on the sidelines. Down in the waiting room, the triplets clung to Ruby's arms, their tiny bodies trembling. Nova whispered, Is Mama gonna wake up? Ruby smoothed their hair, her voice firm despite the wobble in her throat. Your Mama's strong. Stronger than this storm, stronger than the whole world. She gon' come back to you. Alicia joined them, crouching so her eyes met theirs. Surgeries take time. It'll feel like forever, but the best thing you can do right now is keep believing. She needs that. So the children did the only thing they knew, closed their eyes and hummed Home Again, their voices soft and shaky, filling the room with fragile hope. Back upstairs, Patel made the first incision, her voice calm but commanding. Scalpel. The instrument landed in her palm. She moved with precision, her team anticipating her every word. Marcus pressed closer to the glass, his fists clenching with every cut. He whispered under his breath, as though Tiana could hear him, Hold on. Please, hold on. For an hour, the surgery progressed smoothly. Patel bypassed the blockage, her hands steady as she repaired the damage. Monitors beeped, steady and reliable. Hope swelled in Marcus's chest. Then, without warning, the heart monitor flatlined. The piercing alarm sliced through the room, Nurses shouted, scrambling. Patel's voice rose above the chaos. "We're losing her!" Crash cart. Now! Marcus's breath caught, his vision tunneling. He slammed a hand against the glass, helpless rage flooding him. "Come on, Tiana." "Don't do this to me inside." Patel applied the paddles. "Clear." Tiana's body jolted violently. Nothing. Again. "Clear." Another jolt. Still nothing. Marcus's nails dug into his palms, every second stretching into eternity. Downstairs, the triplets stopped singing abruptly, shivers racing down their spines. Nia's eyes widened. "Something's wrong. I can feel it." Nova's hands shook as she clutched Ruby's arm. "We gotta sing louder." She needs us, and so they did, rising to their feet, voices raw but unyielding, pouring everything they had into the song. Home Again echoed through the lobby, up the stairwells, into the vents, flooding the hospital like a living prayer. Patients and visitors joined in, their voices swelling into a chorus. Staff paused mid-shift, humming the melody under their breath. Within minutes, the hospital became a cathedral of sound, every voice lifted in one desperate plea. Back in the OR, Patel shocked Tiana a third time. The monitor flickered, then steadied. A faint beep, a heartbeat. Patel exhaled, relief flooding her face. "We've got her." Stabilize and continue. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. He pressed his forehead against the glass, whispering, "Thank you." The team worked furiously, repairing, suturing, restoring. Another hour passed, tense but steady. Finally, Patel removed her gloves, her voice calm but triumphant. "She's stable. Surgery complete." Marcus sagged against the wall, tears burning his eyes. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to breathe. Hours later, Tiana was wheeled into recovery, pale but alive. Marcus followed close, his hand brushing hers, as nurses transferred her to a bed. Her eyelids fluttered, barely opening, but enough to see him. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice fragile. "Always," he said, his throat thick, "and I'm not leaving again." A single tear slid down her cheek as her eyes closed in sleep. Downstairs, Marcus appeared in the waiting room, still in scrubs, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. The triplets rushed him, their voices colliding. "Is she okay? Did she wake up? Can we see her?" Marcus crouched, pulling them all into his arms. His voice broke as he said, "She made it. Your mama's alive." The children sobbed into his chest, relief pouring out of them like rain after drought. Ruby wiped her eyes furiously, muttering, "Thank you, Jesus." The waiting room erupted in cheers as word spread. Strangers hugged, nurses clapped, patients in wheelchairs wheeled themselves closer to join the celebration. For a moment, it felt like the whole hospital had been healed. But not everyone was rejoicing. In his office, Bolton seethed, staring at the headlines flashing across his screen. Triplets' mother, saved by emergency surgery. Dr. Reed stands by family, despite scandal. He slammed his fist on the desk. This should have buried him. Instead, they've turned him into a hero. His assistant shifted nervously. "What will you do now?" Bolton's eyes narrowed. "He thinks this is over." "It isn't. If I can't beat him with policy, I'll bury him with scandal." He pulled out a file, thick with papers and photographs. Inside were documents Marcus had long forgotten, old records from his residency, mistakes he'd corrected years ago. Bolton's lips curled into a cruel smile. Everyone has skeletons. It's time his were dragged into the light. Meanwhile, across town, Dre Collins sat in a cheap motel, stacks of cash piled on the bed. He flipped through bills, his grin wide. They're all celebrating, and I'm the only one winning. But a sharp knock rattled the door. Dre froze. Another knock, louder this time. "Atlanta PD, open up!" His grin vanished. Back in the hospital, Marcus sat beside Tiana's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. He held her hand gently, whispering, "You gave me 3 miracles, Tiana, and I'm never letting them go." But deep inside, he knew Bolton wasn't finished. The real storm hadn't passed yet. Morning crept into Grady Crest like a blessing, gold light sliding across polished floors and sleepy faces. The worst of the storm was gone. The world smelled like rain and disinfectant and second chances. Tiana slept, pale but steady, a faint blush returning to her cheeks. The triplets took turns dozing in chairs, their tiny sneakers dangling, dried tear tracks silvering their skin. Miss Ruby sat upright as always, purse in her lap like a shield and a throne. Marcus stood at the foot of the bed and watched the monitors settle into a rhythm that felt like a lullaby. He'd memorized every rise and fall, every little blip that meant stay, every soft hum that said, "She's still here." His throat tightened. He reached into his pocket and rolled a small silver ring between his fingers, simple, unadorned, warmed by his palm. Not a proposal, not yet. A promise. The door eased open. Dr. Sana Patel slipped in with a tired smile. "Your girl's tougher than the weather," she murmured. "Vitals are holding." "No complications overnight," Arcus exhaled. "You just made a surgeon cry." Patel arched a brow. "You've been crying since pre-op, Reed." She moved to adjust a drip, then paused, her gaze softening. "I'm happy for you. For all of you, but you know what's coming." Bolton. The name tasted like metal. "He'll push the medical board. He'll push the press. He'll push anything he can." Patel's voice gentled. "Stand in what's true. Don't let him make you small." He nodded. Patel squeezed his arm and slipped out as quietly as she'd come. A soft sound lifted from the bed. Tiana's lashes fluttered. Her eyes found him, unfocused at first, then clear enough to bloom into relief. "You're still here." "Always," he whispered. Her lips curved beneath the oxygen cannula. He stepped closer, set the small silver ring on a thin chain, and draped it gently over her collarbone. "Not a proposal," he said, voice rough. "A promise. No more running, no more silence. When you're strong, we'll talk about the rest." "Okay," she breathed, tears spilling, but this time they were soft and bright, not brittle. The door burst open, and 3 small meteors hit the room. Nova, Nia, and Nico, scrambling up to the rails, whispering, "Mama! Mama!" through a waterfall of shs from Ms. Ruby. Tiana's fingers trembled as she threaded them through her children's hair. The triplets hummed the bridge of "Home Again" so quietly it was more like a prayer. Marcus closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him. A tap came at the glass. Alicia stood in the doorway holding a folder, her face tired, eyes shining. "Can I steal 2 minutes?" They gathered at the corner of the room. Alicia opened the folder like it was a gift. The donations platform reimbursed the stolen funds. PD froze the outgoing transfers and flagged the destination account. Someone tried to move it through a shell LLC at a motel. "Guess who, Dre?" Marcus said. "Dre," Alicia confirmed. "Warrant issued at dawn." "They're at his door right now." She flipped another page. "Also, the board is calling a noon briefing in the lobby. Mrs. Caldwell wants to make announcements." Alicia's smile tilted conspiratorial. "Good ones?" Nova's ears perked up. "Announcements like what?" "Like policy changes," Alicia said, "and a concert idea." She winked at the kids. "But that's her news to tell." Tiana turned her head slowly toward Marcus, the ring glinting on the chain. "This city saved me," she whispered. "How do we say thank you?" "By living," he said, "and by giving back." Across town, greasy light slashed a cheap motel room where Dre Collins crammed wads of cash into a duffel. The door rattled under the weight of a fist. "Atlanta PD, open up!" Dre's smile died. He swept the laptop, the SIM cards, the cash, back window, painted shut. He shoved his shoulder. The frame groaned. The front lock turned with a click. 2 officers stepped in, calm, practiced, disappointed. "Dre Collins?" Dre hesitated a heartbeat too long, then bolted. His shoulder hit the window. The sash exploded in a cough of splinters. He got one leg through before the nearest officer caught his ankle and folded him back to the carpet like a bad card trick. "Man, y'all doing the most. Hands behind your back." Metal kissed his wrists. The laptop bag slid off the bed, spilling a spool of receipts like a confession. Somewhere across the city, 3 7-year-olds yawned into their mother's neck, safe. By noon, the lobby looked like a community center after Sunday service. Choir fans waving, strollers, walkers, nurses still in scrubs holding coffee like communion. Cameras lined the back wall, red lights blinking. The triplets stood between Alicia and Ms. Ruby, pressed and combed, shy and proud. Marcus steadied Tiana's wheelchair, careful of lines and bandages. Dr. Patel stood near the nurses, arms folded, finally allowing herself a grin. Mrs. Caldwell stepped to the small podium. She wore a simple suit and the expression of a woman who was done asking permission from lesser men. "Good people of Atlanta," she began, voice carrying like a hymn. "This hospital has witnessed something I will never forget. During a blackout, while a storm tried to take our breath, 3 children gave us back our voice." She gestured to the triplets. The lobby answered with cheers that trembled the glass. Caldwell lifted a hand for quiet. "We face hard truths today. Healthcare can shame the people it should serve. Policy can become cruelty if we stop seeing faces, but today we choose compassion as policy." She turned, eyes pinning the row of administrators like butterflies. Effective immediately, Grady Crest Medical is establishing the Community Care Fund, dedicated to emergency cases for uninsured families, seeded with a match from our institutional donors, and named in honor of the woman who never left these children's side. She smiled toward the front. The Ruby Johnson Community Care Fund. The lobby roared. Miss Ruby, who had never in her life cried in public, put her hand over her mouth and broke. The triplets clung to her elbows and jumped like sparrows. Caldwell waited, then continued. "Next, the attempted theft of donations meant for Miss Tiana Price. Those funds have been restored and secured. In partnership with APD and the platform, we will pursue every legal remedy to return stolen money and prevent future fraud. To the donors, your dollars will do what you intended, save lives." Flashbulbs peppered the air. Caldwell nodded once, then squared her shoulders. "Finally, personnel. In recent days, leadership failures undermined our mission and endangered trust. Effective this afternoon, Mr. Bolton is placed on administrative leave pending investigation of conduct during emergency operations." A gasp ripped through the administrator row. Caldwell didn't flinch. "We will rebuild culture here, with accountability, not fear." She stepped back. "Now I'd like to invite those voices that held this place together to share one more song." The triplets looked to Tiana. She nodded, tears gleaming. Nova inhaled. Nia found her note. Nico found the pulse. The first line of Home Again rose like dawn over water. The lobby sang back. People held their phones high, but many forgot to hit record. Some moments you keep better in your chest. Marcus watched Tiana's shoulders shake. He reached for her hand. She leaned into him, as if she'd been meaning to fall that way her whole life. When the last note trembled into silence, the lobby erupted. Caldwell returned to the mic with a final grin. "A week from today, on this very sidewalk, we'll host a thank you concert for first responders, staff, and this community. Our guests of honor will open the show. She nodded to the triplets. Fair contract, paid performance, with every check co-signed by their mama. Ruby hollered, Amen, without a shred of shame. Laughter rolled like light. Reporters surged. Questions fired. Dr. Reed, are you the father? Miss. Price, how do you feel? Alicia raised both hands. Traffic cop calm. One at a time, please. She set quick boundaries. No direct questions to the kids. No flash in Tiana's face. This time, the press listened. A detective threaded through the crowd, stopping before Alicia. Ma'am, quick update. Suspect in donation theft is in custody. Funds secured. Thank you, detective. Alicia's smile shattered and reassembled. She slipped the news to Ruby, who whispered it into Tiana's hair. Relief felt like air, the first lungful after surfacing. They wheeled Tiana back upstairs before the crowd could swallow her whole. In the corridor, calm returned. Bleach, soft shoes, the hum of machines. The children danced their steps around the fourth poles, questions bubbling. Can we decorate Mama's room? Can we make a sign? Can we bring Ms. Patel a cupcake? Yes, yes, yes. Inside the room, the quiet felt sacred. Sun pooled on the blanket. The ring on the chain winked. Marcus helped Tiana ease into her pillows. Careful, patient. The kids stuck paper stars to the window. Crooked, perfect. Ruby perched at the sink, fanning herself. If this ain't a testimony, I don't know what is. A knock came, soft but official. A courier in a navy jacket stood in the doorway with a clipboard. Delivery for Doctor. Read. Signature required. Marcus frowned, signed, peeled open the stiff envelope. Legal weight sagged in his hand. He read. The room tilted a degree. Marcus? Tiana's voice was thin. What is it? He swallowed. From the State Medical Board. Ruby straightened. Say what now? He kept reading, the words marching like cold soldiers. Notice of summary proceedings. Allegations of unprofessional conduct. Emergency hearing. Tomorrow 9 a.m. The complaint attached. Cherry-picked notes from residency. An ancient complication he'd disclosed years ago, now spliced to look like malice. At the bottom, a fresh addendum. Failure to disclose conflict of interest. Signed by one G. Bolton. Marcus lifted his eyes. The triplets had gone very still. Tiana's fingers tightened around the blanket. They're coming for you, she whispered. He folded the papers carefully and slid them back into the envelope like a blade into a sheath. He forced a smile for the kids. I promised I wouldn't run, he said softly. So I'll be there. Nova's chin jutted. We'll sing outside the building. No, baby, Tiana murmured. We ain't turning everything into a stage. Ruby's voice cut in, steel wrapped in honey. We ain't making a stage. We making a covering. That man ain't walking in there alone. Marcus looked around the room, at the woman he loved alive by stitches and grace, at 3 children who now knew his hands as father's hands, at the auntie who had stood like a lighthouse in every storm. Fear pressed, love pressed harder. Tomorrow, he said, more to himself than to them, we tell the truth louder than they tell their lies. Outside, the sun climbed the glass. Down the hall, someone laughed. In the bed, Tiana's breath kept time. The envelope sat on the bedside tray like a dare, and the chorus that had carried a city began to gather itself for one last song. Dawn came the color of peach flesh, soft and sticky against the glass of Tiana's window. The city was rinsed clean. Buses hissed to life, news vans blinked awake, and somewhere down on Baker Street, a trumpet player warmed his horn like he was calling the sun up by name. Marcus stood at the sink, tightening a navy tie with hands that could thread a suture blindfolded, but trembled now. The envelope from the medical board lay on the tray, beside the bed, like a dare. Miss Ruby fussed with the triplets' collars, tiny white shirts, tiny black shoes, little palms clapping quiet rhythms to keep nerves from shaking them apart. Tiana watched them all, propped against pillows, color back in her cheeks. She reached to her neck, lifted the chain with the small silver ring, and held it out. "Take it," she whispered. "Carry me with you." He bent so she could fasten it around his throat. The cool metal kissed his skin. It felt like a promise that knew his pulse by heart. "I'll be back," he said, and tried to make it sound easy. Nova stepped up, solemn as a deacon. "If they're mean, just look at us," she instructed. "We'll be outside the building." "We'll make your brave bigger," he smiled, something cracking sweet in his chest. "Deal." The State Medical Board building was stone and glass and too much echo. Outside, a crowd gathered like Sunday on a Tuesday. Nurses in scrubs, cafeteria workers with coffee, aunties in church hats, uncles in falcons' caps, and a youth choir from New Hope with folders clipped and ready. Cameras hovered at the edges but kept their distance, as if this were not a scandal, but a service. The triplets stood up front with Miss Ruby and Alicia. A small hand-painted sign leaned against a planter. "We sing truth." Another, in Nico's shaky block letters, "Let good doctors keep healing." At 9 sharp, the doors swallowed Marcus and Dr. Patel. Inside, the boardroom smelled faintly of lemon and paper. 7 members faced them across a long oak table. The chair, a woman with silver hair and a straight spine, nodded for them to sit. "We appreciate your attendance, Doctor." "Read," she began. "This is a summary proceeding regarding allegations of unprofessional conduct, including undisclosed conflicts." Bolton was there at the edge of the room, arms folded, a bruise of a smile on his mouth. He didn't speak, he didn't have to. His signature glared up from the complaint packet like a greasy fingerprint. The chair folded her hands. "Let's begin with your statement." Marcus stood. He didn't look at Bolton. He looked at the board members one by one, as if he were telling each of them a story over kitchen table coffee. "I disclosed my prior relationship to Miss Price as soon as I knew the patient was her," he said, voice even. "I recused myself from the surgery the moment paternity became probable. Dr. Patel led the case. I supported from the hallway as any physician would for any patient. My mistake was not anticipating how quickly past and present would collide. My duty has always been, and remains, the care of patients. Sometimes that duty requires stepping back. Sometimes it requires standing up." A board member with kind eyes tilted her head. "And the children?" "Yes," Marcus said. He felt the ring press cool against his chest. "They are mine. I learned through a lab result 48 hours ago. I intend to be their father in every way the law and love allow." Pens paused. Someone coughed. Bolton's smile thinned. The chair nodded. "Dr. Patel?" Patel rose, spine a line of iron. Dr. Reed did not touch a scalpel in Miss Price's OR. He did not order a medication, did not place a line, did not so much as breathe on the sterile field. He advocated, as a human, not a surgeon, when bureaucracy threatened to turn a woman into a billing code. If this is unprofessional, then compassion has been misfiled as misconduct. A small hum slipped from somewhere along the board, approval disguised as a throat clear. Alicia was next. She laid emails, timestamps, and bank confirmations on the table, like sheet music. "The donation theft was external fraud," she said. "Funds were reimbursed. A PD has a suspect in custody, attempting to tie that crime to Dr. Reed is either ignorance or malice." The chair glanced to the doorway where a detective in plain clothes lifted a hand. "Detective Rains, APD. We arrested one Dre Collins this morning at the Cascade Inn. multiple counts of wire fraud, theft by deception. He's talking, none of it leads to this hospital or doctor. Reed quiet, settled like dust. Finally, Mrs. Caldwell stepped forward, though she wasn't on the agenda, her presence a surprise dare. She spoke not as board, but as citizen. I watched a man risk his reputation to keep our hospital honest. I watched 3 children hold up a building with a song. We will not punish light for showing us where the rot was. The chair breathed out, eyes on the papers, then the people. We will recess to deliberate. Outside, sun-warmed stone. The triplets stood on the courthouse steps, hands linked. Miss Ruby leaned to them. "You ain't gotta perform for nobody," she said. "But if you want to pray, sing, hum, I got your back like a choir robe." Nova squeezed her sibling's fingers. Just one verse, she decided, for him. They sang soft at first, the kind of soft that crawls under ribs and lives there. The youth choir found them, slotted in harmony like puzzle pieces, altos rising around children's treble, tenors laying a roadway of sound. Passers-by stopped. A woman in a postal uniform took off her headphones and lifted her face to the sky. The boardroom windows were double-glazed, but music has a way of ignoring engineering. Marcus sat in the hallway outside the deliberation chamber, elbows on knees, head bowed. Through the ring and chain, against his sternum, he felt the song like a second pulse. Dr. Patel sat beside him, her shoulder a steady wall. "They're with you," she said. He nodded. They always were. I was the one who didn't know. The door opened. The chair looked at him, something like softness thawing the granite of her face. "Dr. Reed," he rose. "Thank you for your patience," she said. "After review of testimony and documentation, the board finds no cause for emergency suspension. The complaint regarding undisclosed conflict is dismissed. You recused appropriately once you confirmed paternity. We will recommend minor policy updates for disclosure timing in emergent cases. Hospital-wide, not personal. Regarding the appended allegations from your residency, those were previously adjudicated and closed. We see no basis to reopen them." His bones went water. He caught the nearest wall and let out a breath that had been living in his body for years. "You may return to practice," the chair finished. "And Dr. Reed." She hesitated, then let the corners of her mouth turn up. "Tell those children they sing beautifully." The doors swung open, cameras clicked, but nobody ran toward them. The crowd seemed to know this belonged to family first. The triplets read his face like sunlight through rain. Nico broke first, exploding into a sprint that ended in a collision with his knees. "You good?" he demanded. "I'm good," Marcus laughed, gathering all 3 as if his arms had finally found the work they were built for. "We're good." Miss Ruby thumped him between the shoulders, in that way that meant pride and warning and love. "Knew it," she sniffed. "Now go get your woman and your babies home." "First," Alicia said, breathless with joy and organization, "we've got a concert to put on." Late afternoon turned the hospital's front sidewalk into a block party. Food trucks steamed, toddlers toddled, nurses danced with patients in wheelchairs. The youth choir lined the edge of the temporary stage. A banner stretched across the entrance. "Thank you, Atlanta." Beneath, smaller letters, the Ruby Johnson Community Care Fund. Launch Day. Mrs. Caldwell opened the event with a brief, fierce speech about policy with a heart. Then she nodded to the MC, who nodded to the band, who hit a bright, easy 4-count like a door opening. The triplets walked on in little denim jackets someone had bedazzled with tiny silver stars. The crowd lost its mind. Nova leaned into the mic, cheeks pink but chin high. "We wrote a new song with Mama," she said, voice wobbling then finding itself. "It's called City of Heartbeats." They began, hand claps, a foot stomp pulse, a melody that curled like ribbon around streetlight stories. The chorus rose, we held the light when the lights went out. We kept the beat when the heart had doubt. Lift up your hands, let the whole town shout. Slash city of heartbeats, we're home now, we're home now. By verse 2, half of Atlanta knew the hook, and the other half pretended they'd always known it. A trumpet hit a golden line. The pastor from New Hope leaned into a harmony that made strangers grin at each other like cousins. Tiana watched from a wheelchair by the stage, tears running free, the ring winking at her throat like a tiny moon. When the last chord shivered into the evening, Marcus took the mic, the crowd folding quiet around his voice. "You saved my family," he said simply. "You saved my city. Thank you to the nurses, aides, janitors, cafeteria workers, security, EMTs, doctors, everybody whose good work doesn't make headlines but keeps hearts beating. Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell. Thank you, Miss Ruby, and to 3 small people who taught me what courage sounds like." He knelt then, not showy, just human, so his eyes were level with 3 pairs looking back. "I missed your first steps," he said, voice breaking. "I won't miss another. If it's okay with your mama, may I be your dad?" 3 heads nodded so hard their hair bounced. They hit him like joy. Laughter shook the stage. Someone yelled, "Say less!" Someone else hollered, "That's right!" He stood and turned to Tiana. The world hushed in that way the world does for the important parts. "I put a ring on a chain 'cause I didn't want to ask for forever while you were fighting for today," he said, "but today is here. And I want all of your tomorrows, not because you need saving, because you saved me." He slid the ring from the chain, hands steady now, and offered it, not as spectacle, not as payment, but as an answer to a question life had asked them both for years. "Marry me, Tiana Price. Take my last name or keep yours, or make one up. We'll answer to anything as long as it means home." Tiana laughed through tears that wouldn't stop. "You learned how to talk pretty while I was asleep," she teased, voice shaking. "Yes." The noise that rose from that sidewalk could have lifted shingles 2 blocks over. Miss Ruby cried like a hallelujah. Dr. Patel wiped her eyes and pretended it was dust. Alicia whooped so loud a pigeon startled off the awning. Marcus slid the ring onto Tiana's finger. It looked right there, like the hand had been waiting all this time and knew where to set it down. The band found the key without anyone saying a word, and "Home Again" swelled one last time, not desperate now, but joyful, the difference between begging and belonging. People sang with their whole ribs. The hospital windows caught the sound and threw it back. As twilight bruised into night, candles flickered on phone screens like fireflies. The triplets leaned into their mother, and she into their father, and he into a city that had decided to be better than its worst day. Later, when the food trucks packed up and the stagehands coiled cables like sleeping snakes, when the cameras went home and the sidewalk smelled like sugar and rain, the family rode the elevator up in a bubble of quiet. The ring flashed, the chain lay open on the bedside tray, work done. In the dim, Tiana touched Marcus's cheek. "We made it," she said. He kissed her knuckles, then each child's brow. "We did." Miss Ruby turned off the overhead and left the lamp humming low. "Rest, babies," she said, voice like a blanket. "Tomorrow got its own song." The city exhaled, sirens softened. Somewhere the man with the trumpet played a slow, contented line that curled around the hospital like an arm. Inside the room, the monitors kept time. 3 small heartbeats dozed in 4/4 under a mother's breath and a father's promise. And Atlanta, patched, humming, newly aware of its own rhythm, learned the words to a chorus it would be singing for a long, long while. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.